Hello and welcome to the short Vort on Parshas Lech Lecha. In Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Yud Aleph, the Pasuk says that after Avraham went to Eretz Yisrael per the directive of Hashem via Lech Lecha, the famous commandment, there's a famine in the land of Canaan, and Avraham and his wife are forced to go down to Egypt. And as they approach Egypt, Avraham says to his wife, "Now I know that you are beautiful." Avraham didn't know that his wife was beautiful. She was one of the four most beautiful women in the world. How come he's only realizing this now? This is a classic question. I'm going to share an answer from Rav Moshe Wolfson, the Mashgiach of Yeshiva Torah B'das, as I heard from Rav E Kerzner on TorahAnytime. But first, I want to connect it to something that I see related, and that is in Pirkei Avos, in Perek Zayin, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Zayin. Nitai Arbeli says, be distant from a bad neighbor, do not connect, do not associate with an evil person. So the Sefer Moshol HaAvos, which cited Lev Eliyahu Lapian's Lev Eliyahu on Parshas Noach, tells us that when Lapian was younger and he learned in the yeshiva in Lamza, that there was this old hospital, it was very old, and when people would go in for one disease, they would come out sick from something else, perhaps something even worse than what they entered with. So they eventually investigated, and they found that because the building was so old, that these walls had absorbed various illnesses, and now they would come out and they would infect the new patients. So they had to totally destroy and burn down the hospital so there'd be no remnant and start anew. The same thing applies in the spiritual world. When you associate with the wrong people or the wrong place, it can have a negative influence on you. The bad that's been done there can hurt us in the way that we act. And I think this is something that will apply and fits with the answers to some questions. Now, we also had a question of, in Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Hey, it says that Avraham took, when he was doing the Lech Lecha part on the way to Canaan, he took his wife Sarah, he took Lot, and he took his wealth, his possessions. But later on, after the trip to Egypt, it says in Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Aleph, Vayal Avraham Mitzrayim, hu v'ishto v'chol ashalo, his wife and his possessions, and then it says V'lot imo and Lot. So it seems to be some type of distance had grown between them, and Lot had become less important than Avram's possessions. Why would this be? So Rav Moshe Wolfson has a chiddush as far as why all of a sudden, as Avraham Avinu is heading to Egypt, that he notices his wife's beauty. And that, he says, is because of the influence of approaching Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was very immoral and very materialistic. And even in Avraham Avinu had a little bit of an influence that because of their zima, their immodesty, in Egypt, that he too started noticing the looks, and he noticed that his wife was so beautiful. So that's related to the harchek mishach and ra, stay away from these bad influences. And the same thing says Rav Rosner, Rav Rosner quoting Rav Soleveitchik, presumably Rav Yosheber, that this is what happened with Lot, that Lot became more distant in the pasuk and literally, spiritually, with Avraham Avinu, after having gone into Egypt. Because of the materialism and immorality of Mitzrayim, Lot had felt that hashpah in a worse way than Avraham Avinu. As Avraham Avinu, when he was there, he was praying for his wife to be protected. But what did Lot do? Lot went around, explored the museums, looked at the cultures, the nice buildings. He saw the wealth of Egypt, and he became enamored and influenced by it. That's why later on it says, when he had to choose where to live, when he was separated from Avraham Avinu in Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Yud. So he says that about Sodom, there was Kika Har Yarden, Ki Hu Mashkeh, Ki Gan Hashem, Ke Eretz Mitzrayim. It was like the garden, beautiful like the garden of Hashem, like Egypt. He remembered Egypt as being this beautiful, wonderful place. And if you'll check out the 2018 short board with Rav Schwab, Rav Gladstein, and Rav Noach Olbaum about how the Richush, the wealth factor, is what led to the downfall and separation between Avram and Lot. So I think here we see that both Avram, even Avram, and Lot, to a greater extent, were influenced by having the hashpah, the influence of a bad neighbor, of being connected with evil people. So ultimately, Lot fell so far away that Avram Avinu had to separate from him, and had to and said, "You choose where you want to live, because not only can wherever you go, I'm not going to just stay where I was. I'm going to go even further away." So the big gap. He was applying the harchik nishachin, right? He didn't want this bad neighbor, because now Lot was a Russia, even Russia. So they had to separate. Let's remember and be wary that when we have neighbors, we should choose who we're living by to the extent that we can when we move in, and even if someone else moves into our neighbors, we have to figure out whether we can stay, and avoid proximity to an involvement with the negative social influences that are all too current today. Thank you for listening. Like, share, and subscribe. Have a wonderful week and a wonderful Shabbos.